Good evening, everyone. So, I've seen a lot of questions online about how to get your air conditioner to work with your LS swap. So, I was going to show you what I did. Maybe it'll help somebody else. I know everything's different and it's not going to be exactly like what I did here, but might be a couple of things you can use to get yours going. So, we'll start here with the compressor. So, I use the Tejas motor mounts to get my to mount this motor, and with that it allows you to use the factory compressor without having to notch the frame or anything. So that is a factory LS AC compressor, and the one that I had that came off my donor, I installed it and it just, I think it was shot when I got it. It would kind of work, kind of not. But another problem I had with it, I think it was a variable displacement compressor. So I went and did a bunch of research, found what would fit, and it ended up at O'Reilly's and bought this guy. So there's a part number for you. I don't remember the cost. You can look it up just as easy as I can and tell what it costs. But I put this compressor on. It's not variable displacement, and it has worked well. So that's what worked for me mounting this compressor. So what I had on this truck when I had the small block in it was I went with classic auto air, whatever it is, and their air conditioning system. So I already had a condenser, the evaporator, everything inside, but the old compressor being a V-belt and the location, none of that would work. So I ended up buying an adapter kit from Cold Air Direct. I'm sorry, I can't remember the names of these companies right now, but you can see it right there. And what that took the place of was this that came off the factory LS in the truck. And the reason I got this piece sitting here is I want to show you something. When I bought those pieces, it's a single piece, but if you look on the right, you can see the lip is a lot deeper than the one on the left. Well, the adapter that I bought, they were both the same. So the first time I put it together and tried to pull a vacuum, of course I had a bad leak. So what I ended up doing was going to Advance Auto and purchasing this O-ring kit. There's the part number for that. You can see the O-rings in there. If you see that big O-ring, or maybe even that one, I doubled these up to make up the distance. And I know that's probably not the right answer. I know people will say you should never ever do that, but it worked for me. So by doubling that up, where this is, it's sealed. So I put that on, was able to pull a vacuum, let it sit for a while, and the vacuum held. So I had to assume I had no leaks at that point. So there's that. The reason I wanted to had something else I wanted to show you guys. This was the first adapter kit that I bought, and the reason it's sitting here is it was not the right one. If you look, it's supposed to mount like that. Well, not exactly. It should be more like that. But I wanted to show you that so that you could look and make sure you get the right thing from the beginning. This wasn't very expensive. I didn't even try to return it, but I thought it'd be a good opportunity just to let everybody know to make sure you have the right things. So those are some of the parts I used. As far as the hoses and everything else, that all came with the original kit. The difference was the high side and the low side fittings. These mounted on the compressor, where with this one they wouldn't work down there because of how tight it is. So I just reversed it. So with the other kit, this was mounted at the compressor. This was mounted at the compressor. I just reversed them. So now I have my high side and low side up here. Doesn't matter. It still fits and works however it should. And I know I should have caps on these, and I left them sitting right there and went down the road with them. So they're laying in a ditch somewhere. I'll get some more eventually. So with all that, that's the parts and pieces I used to make this work. Now, as far as charging, I see a lot of different things, and a lot of guys, they buy the kit at whatever parts store, and it's just the single low side with the yellow, green, red gauges on it. And they'll all try to charge until they get it to that, I think the green stage, whatever your kit looks like. The problem with that is you don't know what your high side is doing. And I'm not going to get into the whole details of refrigeration. There are people much smarter than me that can explain it much better than I can. But I have my set of Harbor Freight gauges here, not very expensive. If you're going to be doing any work like this, I highly recommend you get a set of gauges. Because what you want to know is at your condenser. And the problem I have with this one, when I first set on this up and tried charging it, I would get my low side down here to about 30 psi. My high side would peg out and the compressor would actually cut off. So I'm going to hook these up and fire the truck up and show you why the high side is so important. And all this is always easier to do when the truck's not running. So low side's hooked up. I'll grab the high side. A little word of advice too, if you're doing this and charging these units and you got to take this off, the high side is going to be hot. So just be careful. But you can see where I'm sitting right now with something that wasn't tight. So you can see where I'm sitting right now. Both sides are the same as they should be. So let's start the truck up. Wait a minute, something else I need to explain. My electric fans and how I did that. So I have the Holley Terminator X, which uses a negative or a ground signal from the ECU to start fans. So you have to wire those up to a relay where the ground is what pulls the relay end. And I know I've said before my wiring looks awful and I'm going to fix it. Just hasn't been a priority. I want it to drive my truck. But it uses a ground to turn the fans on. With the Holley, it turns on one fan at whatever temperature you want, turns on the second fan at whatever temperature you want. When you're running air condition, you want both fans on. You need as much air across that condenser as possible. So the way that I turned on or pulled in the negative side, like the Holley would, is I went with another relay. So I get a signal off of my evaporator inside the truck. There is a switch in there that when the air condition comes on, it energizes that switch. So I tapped off of that with the stake on, pulled that wire up here, and went into this relay. And for me, it's this brown wire. But that relay gets 12 volts hot, pulls the relay together, and all it does is complete a ground circuit with the relay. You can see my ground's right here. So then I run that back to the ground, which goes to this relay, and I relay on the other side of the truck somewhere. Right there, I think. So when I turn the air conditioner on, it pulls in this relay, which pulls in those two relays. Those two relays are the ones that individually pull the fans on. So you need as much airflow as you can get across a condenser. So that is the reason too, when I bought this radiator, it came with the fans. It came with two 12-inch fans, which worked fine without air conditioning. I couldn't get it to pull enough air across the condenser before the compressor would kick out on high head. So I bought a 13-inch Spall, I think it is, fan. I had to cut out, I took the plasma cutter and cut out the mounting thing here and mounted the 13-inch fan. It's louder, but it pulls a lot more air. If you want to know how I came to that conclusion, I was watching my high side gauge. So my low side was still fine. My high side would peg out, not peg, but it would come over, I think it's 400. Once it got to 400, the compressor would cut off. So with the truck running, everything going like you would want, I set a box fan right in front of my radiator, watch my pressure up here on the high side, turn the box fan on, and you could watch that needle gradually go down, which indicates it wasn't getting enough airflow across this. Now, saying all this, my pressures are still not right. If you ask anybody else or anybody on the internet how to charge these systems, they're going to say mine is wrong. And it may be, but it may be wrong and it still works. This one works. So what I'm thinking is happening is different compressor, higher output and volume than what was on the original 350, and I still have the same size condenser. I don't think this condenser, you can see it back there, I don't think this condenser is big enough for the system that I have. But I also think it works, and I'm not going to mess with it anymore because it works. But let's fire the truck up and turn all this on so you can see my pressures. And it's not a great day for it because it's actually cooled off here. It's been 95 degrees recently, and the day I decided to do a video, it gets cool outside. But everything should be the same ideas. So we had the truck running with no air conditioning. And we'll turn our air conditioning on. Anytime you're charging, you would want to roll the windows up and turn the air conditioning on high. But we'll turn the fan on. You can see I'm on dash, AC. Listen to the truck when I turn the air on. Notice will change. Not as bad with the LS as it was on the small block. A lot of reasons for that. So, air conditioning is on. Let's go back and look at our pressures. You can hear that fan running too. It's much louder than what I had. Trying to get the glare off of them. So you can see that low side is very low, but it doesn't trip. Now the high side is also low because it's cool outside. It's not removing a lot of heat. So the high side temperature directly correlates to what the temperature at the condenser is. The low side does the same thing for the evaporator. So the way I had to charge this was add just enough Freon to keep both sides happy. You can see it keeps dropping on the low side and it keeps rising on the high side. But no matter where I am in the RPM range, it doesn't kick off. Now if it were a hot day, the gauge on the right, the high side, it'd be much higher. I mean, I've seen it up to 300 just sitting idle when it's 90, 95 degrees outside. It's probably 75 today, maybe 80. But I wanted to shoot this and tell everybody how important the high side is. Not a lot of guys talk about it when they're charging up these units. And again, this works for me. It may not work for you. But it is nice to have air conditioning in your hot rod when it's 95 and humid out. And just because I like the sound, thought you might too. That's what it sounds like with dual Black Widows on it. So that was how I did air conditioning on my truck. If you have any questions or anything I can help you with, leave a comment, and I try to answer them as soon as I see them, because not to be rude, but if I don't, I'll forget. But I appreciate you watching. Take care.